AussieAndaYank presents a quick chat with the team from Cunard. Our guests today, Alicia Oliphant and Steve Smotrees. Today's show will have the Aussie enjoying reminiscing about Queen Mary II.
Attend!
Oh, is it
Nancy
on holiday?
The Yank is taking a break from the big screen and will be back on the show in the near future.
I kind of want to sort of talk to our audience and our listeners about, the rich cultural history of Cunard. Do you want to sort of broach on that topic with us today?
Sure. Yeah, happy to kick that off. I mean, I think that's one of the really fun things about representing this amazing brand. 180 years of history. So, it is a true heritage brand. And when you think this great cruise industry that we're all, lucky to be part of, it all really started with Cunard 180 years ago, and so many firsts over the years. And I think the thing that's really special about Cunard, there's some other brands that have been around a long time, but I think the special thing about Cunard is you still see some of the touches of kind of that golden age of cruising from back, say, the 1920s through the 1960s that still is present on our ships today. Our ships are completely super modern. I mean, we have one of the most modern luxury fleets out there.
Yeah.
All the decor, the craftsmanship, it's taking that inspiration from that Art Deco style, and bringing that onto a modern ship. And I think that really makes it extremely special. A lot of the kind of classic experiences like, doing proper afternoon tea, doing ballroom dancing in front of a live orchestra every night. It's those things that make Cunard unique and special, and it's those are experiences that Cunard owns. But the history of Cunard goes on and on. I think, Alicia, you probably have some great anecdotes about the history of Cunard.
Yes, it's really what drew me to work for Cunard for 24 years already now. And it really was knowing that Cunard was the first, her legacy of 180 years strong. She was the first to have electricity on board ships. She was the first to have swimming pools. And the first booze cruise, which Steve always likes to point out.
Can you believe that, the first booze cruise? Like, you would never think Cunard, but I love that story because it's, Cunard was an innovator, and during Prohibition time, they said, here's an opportunity. And so they'd run sailings from New York down to Cuba, and they had the largest bar at sea. So it's a great story.
And people went just because they could do that.
Well, as an Aussie, I think, the booze cruise, that's what we need to name one of the cruises, a booze cruise, and you get every Aussie on the ship.
Canadians like that as well. And New Yorkers. New Yorkers like the wine aspect of it. We carry thousands and thousands of bottles of wine.
You do, don't you?
But then a little bit more on the history, just, even just from an itinerary. Cunard did the very first world cruise back in 1922, and that's something we're really excited about because we're getting ready to celebrate the centennial of that at the end of 2022. So, first Mediterranean regular service, and then we're the only ones that still do regular transatlantic service, of course, on the only ocean liner carrying passengers today. And so, again, all of these things are, Cunard today, in today's huge cruise space, is relatively small with only 3 ships, but the legacy, the history, and just the uniqueness is like any other cruise experience out there.
I was just going to say, because of our legacy, we also have taken celebrities over the centuries back and forth. And even today, we have a wonderful list of celebrities that love to come on board. They call us wanting to come on board.
Yeah.
So it's kind of exciting that we still have that wonderful touch in these modern, sumptuous surroundings of luxury on a grand scale.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Alicia, because it was the who's who of how when people went to travel. And you think again back to the golden age of the 1920s and 1960s. That's how people traveled between the Americas and Europe, was by ship. And Cunard was the most luxurious way to do it. And so all the greatest celebrities at the time, diplomats, world
Winston
leaders.
Churchill.
They all traveled on Cunard. And so, yeah, to Alicia's point, it's interesting today that we will still get big celebrity types that will come to us and say, I want to travel. I mean, I think they want to be part of that legacy as well of traveling on Cunard.
Ed Sheeran, isn't it?
Yes, he was on. Rod Stewart, David
Yes.
Bowie used to come on board too.
Yeah.
James Taylor, Sting performed on board. But you're right, Ed Sheeran, he recorded his last album, or part of his last album on board.
An empty bar and telling myself you're happier, aren't you?
So
When I read about that, that was just amazing. I was like, wow, blown away by that he could actually record at sea. I mean, who else does that? Can you explain the difference between a cruise liner and a cruise ship?
Cruise ship, yeah, very different. And again, Queen Mary 2 is the only ocean liner carrying passengers today. And that's the way ships were designed, again, back in that golden age. And very different in design in that an ocean liner, if you look at it from the front, she's got a very narrow V-shaped hull, shaped like that, where most cruise ships are wider. And then she's also got almost twice as much steel, so thickness of steel. All those things make her very heavy, and so she sits very deep in the water. And all these things make her much more stable. So no matter what the weather conditions are, it keeps her very stable. She also has very special stabilizers, 4 of them on the ship. So she is the grandest ocean liner ever built, but again, that's the design and how ships were made in the past. The reason they don't make other liners these days is because, again, that design of ships now, more modern ships most of them are a little wider. They want to have the ability to go into more ports, and so if you're too deep in the water, if it's not dredged deep enough, you can't get in there. So she can go into most major ports, so it's not a problem for her. But it is very interesting that the design is so different. But you really see it, and I'm sure you experienced it as well. You'll feel, if you're an experienced cruiser and you've been on a typical cruise ship, and then you go on Queen Mary 2, you will feel the difference in how stable she is. And because she's made for that transatlantic crossing. And I never forget my very first crossing I did. It was a December crossing. It was 18 to 20 foot swells for the first 5 days. Wow. And that sounds very ominous when you talk about it, but I'll never forget on the first night being in the Britannia dining room. So you're very low on the ship, kind of towards the back a little bit.
Yep.
And there's, you're low on the ship, so you've got these floor to ceiling windows, and these waves are crashing up against the windows. It looks like we're underwater, basically.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget, just looking at my wine glass is just gently going up and down. I mean, we're still going over waves, so you feel the up and down, but very easy and gradual. You don't get the rocking back and forth. Amazing ship.
Yeah, same thing happened to me sitting in the dining room. The waves hit the window and said, "Oh, isn't that interesting?" And we continued with our conversation. But to give you a little history about building the Queen Mary 2, when she was put on the boards, and this is what she has to look like, we had to find a shipyard to build her. There was not an ocean liner built since the QE2 in 1969.
Right.
So they found Le Havre, France, was the place where they could still have that art, that ability to build an ocean liner. So she wasn't built in the UK as planned originally. She was built in France. And I remember when Queen Elizabeth came on board, because she was the godmother, and she came on board and she went to the bridge and she saw it and she said, "It's such a shame that it wasn't built in the UK." And the captain said, "Your Majesty," I forget what they call it, Her Majesty. So they said, "Your Majesty, her soul is from the UK."
Oh, there you go.
All of her software was done in the UK.
That's the perfect response.
So it was a great experience, and history continues.
Let's take a look at a transatlantic voyage.
I don't know if anybody else out there feels it too, but for me it was important because I wanted to sort of experience, since my heritage is from a European country, and not that my ancestors moved here to America, but I wanted to feel what it would be like, you know, putting myself many, many years back, coming into New York City on a really cold morning, which we experienced, by the way. It was nice and cold and foggy, so I got to feel all of that. But it was such an amazing feeling. It felt like there were not that there were, but there were ghosts and people looking upon you as you were entering into New York City. It was a wonderful feeling, and I won't ever forget that. That was just brilliant. I loved it.
And Jen, it's interesting. People get up at 5 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. in the morning to get up to the top deck to watch them feeling of coming into the New York Harbor and seeing the Statue of Liberty. It gives you goosebumps, even when you've done it a dozen times like I have. You just feel that ambiance of a bygone era.
Yes.
It's so exciting. It really is.
And so many people, you know, North America immigrated by ship. I had ancestors that immigrated by ship. And we found that 20% of all guests or all people who immigrated by ship did so on a Cunard ship. So you have that great connection as well there. And I definitely kind of felt it too. At this point, arriving in New York, you know, you kind of go in the footsteps of your ancestors. And it's really special and profound about that. That really impacts you.
Yeah, it's a very chilling experience. It's not like it's scary, but it's a very chilling experience, particularly if you're coming in the fog in the morning and everything. It was such a wonderful, and I'm so thankful that I was able to experience that. It was awesome. It really was. Well, I'm going to say, guys, it's been wonderful reminiscing about Queen Mary 2 with you too. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, it has. Thank you, Jen, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us today at AussieAndaYank.
Thanks so much, Jen. Great to talk to you, and it's so much fun to touch base with a fellow Cunarder.
Thank you.
And I just hope you'll join us and come on board, and we'll see you and wave goodbye. I do.
Thank you so much.
Travel advisor for this episode is #CruiseTravel Guru. Executive producer and editing of this audio is the Aussie. Co-producer is the Yank. All opinions expressed in this audio are of AussieAndaYank and remain their opinions. Follow, like, subscribe and share AussieAndaYank on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and YouTube.